Welcome to the Tricord Advisors podcast. This is where we answer your questions to help you get excited about your finances. This is Randy Barkley, and I'm Jeremiah Lee. We're both certified financial planners, and I'm also a California licensed attorney.
Okay, Jeremiah, this week, this program, I want to talk about something that's very near and dear to my heart because I'm getting older, right?
Yeah.
And I'm a lot older than you, but I've been in this business for a long time. So I've seen clients go through transition. And so we talk about how long people are going to live. And of course, a big part of what we do for planning is to kind of be interpretive of that. We don't really know exactly what people are going to live, but we put out. So what are the different aspects that we want to talk about? I mean, we talk about life expectancy.
Yeah. I mean, aging is a huge topic.
It is.
And when someone looks at retirement, that's the big question mark that nobody has a good answer to, is to say, how long are we going to live? If you're only going to live 5 years after retirement, that planning is probably pretty easy for most folks. If they say, well, I might live 20 years. Okay, that's normal retirement. Most people think of 30 years is what people are based on. But we're talking today, and one of the things we're talking is the life expectancy.
Right.
What do you expect to live to? But the new piece that people may not know on the radio or on the podcast is your longevity risk. And longevity risk is the percentage potential that you would live beyond that.
Right.
And it's going up, like it's getting higher. So the life expectancy, most people may know, it's a little different for men and women, but generally 77 years in the US. So most people can expect to live to 77. And people take that life expectancy and they run with it. However, that's not
there's
the
always
end
a
of the story.
however, right?
And the way that's calculated is they say if there was a baby that was 0 today, and they take all the different life expectancy, if that continued for the rest of their life, that's how long they'd expect them to live, a baby. And there's a lot of things that happen in young childhood, early adulthood that change that.
And that's longevity risk, right?
Yeah, well, I guess that's the life expectancy, to 77.
Okay.
So now the longevity risk, here's one of the statistics. If you've made it to 65, everyone from 0 years old to 64 don't matter anymore. Like you're now at 65, and say a married couple, good health, doesn't smoke, their chance that one of them will live to 95 is 46%.
So it's almost half.
And 50-50 chance that one of them is going to make it to 95, which most people we talk to are not expecting 95. That seems much further. But if you've already made it to 65, then the likelihood, if you're healthy, of living till 95 is fairly high in my mind.
Yes.
And when we look at planning, to say, we have a number of folks who will say, well, I'm only going to live to 85. That's fine. Let's just plan to that. And we have to push back on that, to say that could be plan A. Plan A might be 85.
Yeah, and my comment to clients is that everybody underestimates their life expectancy. Everybody thinks they're going to live less than what in reality, on the averages, what people actually live.
Because the averages that you see in the life expectancy are not good measures, I don't think, of what you're going to do. And the other aspect that is the hard wild card is, we've had clients who will have a heart attack that 2 decades ago that would have been the end. There just wasn't the medical abilities to save them. Whereas today, with modern medicine, they have an operation and they survive, and they have another 10 healthy years.
I've got clients who've had heart transplants who have lived well beyond the transplant and much longer than what they thought they would live.
Yeah.
And I think they not only surprise themselves, but also their family and friends.
Yeah. So the question is, how do you plan for that? How do you look at your own life from a financial sense, but also just a social sense, staying active. One of the things that was interesting in the financial side is folks who are 65 in our country, in the US, 18% of them are their primary source of income is Social Security. But that's not ideal. So 18% of folks,
and that's below poverty level for most people.
Yeah, very likely. And then the next step is by 80, that's now 33% of folks are living their primary income. 90% of it is from Social Security. And that swing to me tells me that people between 65 and 80, a number of these folks ran out of assets. Right. They ran out of other support. And people say, well, my house is a safety net. It probably is. They say, I have this other account. But those items only last so long. And a lot of the planning that is interesting is most folks in life, their income in retirement is a mezzanine of items. It's part of Social Security. It's part of savings. It's
if they
part
have a pension, they have a small pension or whatever it is. Those kinds of things.
Pension, they might rent out a room to somebody.
Right.
Like, there's lots of different streams of income, and using those all together to say, what's my life look like? But I think it's a really important conversation. We talk about our planning of, do we want to take someone out to 90 years old? Do we want to take them out to 100 years old? Do we want to build in long-term care, knowing that the last stages of life can be expensive? And I would say I don't know if it's the number one, but one of the very top priorities of folks is not to run out of money or be a burden on their family.
Yeah, I mean, that's the most common comment is
Yes.
I don't want to be a burden to my children.
Yeah, and it may be a very American thing. I'm not sure if other
Yeah, I
countries
don't
have the same, but we primarily deal with Americans. So
Yeah, because you go in different cultures, the parents expect the children to kind of step in. I mean, that's what the Chinese are doing right now. They're having
Yeah.
a real difficult time because they're now living through the one child problem, and that's becoming a cultural issue. But for us in America, the common response
Mhm.
is from our clients is that I don't want to be a burden to my children.
Yeah.
And the question is, what is that burden look like, right?
Yeah, and
So-
that there will definitely be family interaction, of care, and I live in I'd say a multi-generational in the sense that my parents and my grandmother is still alive. They come over and they hang out with my kids, and there's a multi-generational. This is a beautiful dynamic of our family, and I really appreciate that. But I'm not caring for them in a way
Right.
that they wouldn't be happy with. They like the social aspect and not the financial aspect because they're self-sufficient. And I think for a lot of clients, it's how do you plan out your life? And so what we're talking about today is how do you do that? I mean, if we know that the life expectancy for a lot of folks because of medical is more than 77 years, it maybe even be 90 years, and there's this quote unquote risk that you may live to 100.
I mean, you have an aunt and uncle.
Yes.
How old is he?
Yeah, he just turned 100 years old, and
So I mean, that's in your now again. That's not your genetic background, but your aunt is what? She's how old is she?
Yeah, mid 90s, and they're
So-
both active and spry, and so
And 100.
and 100
Mid 90s
yeah,
and 100. So
and I'm amazed, and I'm sure people listening, they have this as well. Like the difference in an 80-year-old. I know some 80-year-olds that can barely move.
right.
Other 80-year-olds that they're going to yoga class, they got swim class after this, they're doing volunteering here, and they're staying so active. And part of that's life choices of part of what we'll talk about a little bit is the kind of the social portfolio, not just your investment portfolio, but your social, like who are you having dinner with?
Right.
Who are the people that are inspiring you? Who are you going on adventures with, even as you're aging? Not just in the consuming, entertain me, or let me take a fun trip, but what are you contributing to?
Yeah, and there's been a lot of studies that have been done, starting with the Harvard study, went back almost 85 years, and they've kept track of a whole kind of a core group. And there is clear evidence that if somebody's life is constantly intermixing social, so either with family, friends, volunteer work, church, other organizations, but they're always social, and there's clearly a longevity aspect to that for those people that are in that kind of mode. I mean, there's a higher percentage of those people. If you like, COVID was horrible for people because it isolated them.
Yeah, loneliness and isolation.
Yeah, it was terrible. And they did see the death rate climb through that period of time because people just got depressed and they felt alone, and they weren't they couldn't interact with their family and friends. And it was a horrible time for people in that 2-year timeline.
Yeah.
So again, the studies show that the more social you are, the more it will add to your life expectancy, right?
And we have a hotspot locally over in the Redlands, Loma Linda area.
Right.
There's folks there who, they make good choices with food, what they're eating. They're a lot of vegetable-based eating, but also there's community and people who are active in social community and also making good health choices. It's amazing where we can go. So we can transition a little bit to say, okay, here's the issue. How do you plan for your retirement without knowing exactly how you're going to live?
Right.
So you had to make some estimations. But I think kind of the comment I would bring to people is say, you need to plan a little longer than you think. And there's a number of ways. One is just have more money, but there's some real ways to plan forward. So you have some safety nets.
Yeah, and a big part of our client base is middle America. I mean, we do have affluent clients that have excess, but we also have a whole core group of families and clients that we work with that I wouldn't consider them wealthy.
Yeah.
But we are working with them to make sure that they make the right choices. Like, for example, delaying Social Security, working a little bit longer. It means we've done in the planning side of it. It makes a dramatic difference in the outcome when we come in and we start testing that with like long-term care needs or healthcare delivery and such as that.
Yeah. So the first one, as we kind of talk through some of these solutions, one of them I think would be just the social. Let me start with that. The work-life balance. Historically, people, you get a gold watch, you retire, and you go into the sunset and you write off. But the reality for a lot of folks is that they want to keep working, but they don't want to work full time in the same way. And so the flexibility that we're having with work, a number of clients have come back on. They've retired from their job, but they'll stay on as a consultant in some sort of capacity, or they will move to a part-time or partial time role. We even had one through COVID that went remote, and he was planning to retire. But now that he was remote, he's like, well, I'm getting to do all the things with my spouse that I wanted to. And I still work, but it's not overwhelming.
And his employer encouraged him to work because they were having difficulty filling the positions they needed. And they said, well, you continue. And we've got several that are in that situation.
And so I think one aspect is not to see your retirement as I have to get out of here.
Right.
I'm done. I'm pulling the plug. There's zero income from here forward. But to say, okay, what is my next transition? What do I really want to do? And what can I spend my time doing in a way that's useful? So I think a larger view of work that's not just retire and be done, but rather find a role that is really valuable.
Yeah, I call it that transition. And we talk to clients about what happens when, and it's not necessarily a line in the sand, but what is that transition you're going to go to? I don't like the word retirement because retirement has a kind of a definitive end. It's like your work is done. And I believe that the value of a person goes way beyond what I consider their productive years.
Yeah.
And it's how you change that productive years and you move it into something that is more, you like it better. In other words, what you like to do, like working less, but you like your job. I found, like, for example, somebody who's been trained as an engineer, you don't want to send them into something that is completely the antithesis of that.
Sure, yeah.
You want to allow them to continue to do what they're doing, but not under the stress and under the burden of that work.
Different capacity.
Anyway.
That's great. So work a little longer. The other one is expense management. We always work through budgets with folks of kind of taking a hard look at their expenses and the things that they can eliminate before they transition, make life a lot easier. Talked about the social portfolio of who are you interacting with, what is the joy you're getting. Another piece, and we'll talk more in the next piece, is kind of the stock investing. There was an old rule of thumb that you take 100 years and you subtract your age, and that's kind of your equity to stock position.
So if you were 70 years of age, you would have 70% of your portfolio in bonds and 30% of your portfolio in 70% in bonds and then 30% in equity stocks.
And that idea is, I think, needing an update.
Yes.
I think people are needing to stay in equities, stay in stocks more and longer. Now the mix is different. It doesn't have to be high growth, Amazon or Apple or things like that. But there's a lot of, dividend paying, high quality value stocks that still achieve growth and allow a portfolio to keep growing, past your 50s and 60s and 70s, knowing that you may have this longevity. So you need to keep that growth mindset longer than people have in the past.
So anyway, when we come back, we want to talk about how you structure your investment life and kind of talk about the overview, because this is a real concern for our clients, is how long are they going to live? And everybody has their view and opinion, but at the end of the day, the statistics are pretty overwhelming that you need to structure your life in such a way that your money will outlast you. You don't want to be on that side of it where you outlast your money. Stay tuned and we'll be right back.